myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Good afternoon and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. As always on a Saturday, I've been joined by Mick to talk a bit about Newcastle and probably a little bit about England. But you're in control of the questions. Get your questions over to me and Mick and we'll see what we can do in the next hour. Mick, good afternoon, mate.
Hi, I fully expected, by the way, to be jocked off today and Harrison Ford to be sitting in this seat. Honestly, being however many miles away I am now, I've absolutely loved the Harrison Ford thing this week. And I used to live in Shields for a while. And I'll tell you what, if I ever walked down the Fish Quay in Shields for a bag of chips at Christian's back in the day, if Harrison Ford would be coming through the door, oh man, what a man.
But I've got to be honest.
You've got to get him on the show, Steve.
I went down the quayside yesterday, and now I know Terry the Snapper, and Terry's well known in the paparazzi circles in up and down the country, but specifically in the northeast. And I've got to be honest, he gave me a bit of a heads up. He said, "I know where he is. I know what he's doing. I've had him at a few of my events. He got me a great bit of coverage with Mayweather on 2 occasions. But he did say this is where he's at." He says, and this is his new team. Malmaison, believe it or not. He's obviously moved on now. But yeah, I mean, he was on night shift, wasn't he? He was doing the whole Bamborough Castle to Newcastle, getting in at about 4:30 in the morning. Poor John Shearer. I mean, anyone who doesn't know John Shearer, you know him, I know him. Anyone who goes to Newcastle United will know John Shearer. He's the guy who stands at the players' entrance before the game, after the game, and he has done since the 70s, and he collects signatures, and he does the same with movie stars, pop stars, you name it, and there's a little group of autograph collectors, and John Shearer had been down at the Malmaison from 11 o'clock at night, and he was still there when I went for me walk yesterday afternoon. He was still there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and he still hadn't got the signature. And Harrison wasn't in a very good mood yesterday, and it's made the papers, to be honest. Oh, really? Well, yeah, he basically, him in his mind, I said, "Look, can you just leave us alone?" He didn't want photographs. He signed the first 2 days, but I think it was starting to get on his wick a little bit. And Terry the Snapper, God bless him, he knew everything, where he was going, what he was doing. He even got to Cresswell, and there's some photos of Harrison Ford and Cresswell on his bike. He got a lift to Cresswell and he rode back. And Terry even got the tip off he was going there. And he went up there, and apparently Harrison Ford turned round and said to Terry, "You're becoming a serious pain in my ass."
Well, the best one I saw was him superimposed outside Lucky's, and the caption was Harrison Ford making the most of the 250 trebles.
Honestly, brilliant. I mean, I would love to have met him. He's, I've got to be honest, Sinju, who does our photos, who you met at our events, he's a big Star Wars fan. And I said, if I did take a pen and a bit of paper, and I said, if I bump into him, I'll get his autograph for you. But sadly, it wasn't to be. But hey, fantastic. Great to have Hollywood actors like that in and around the area, Mick. It shows you what kind of place this is, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, nice to know there's someone you can't get your hands on.
I
was beginning to think there wasn't anyone, but there you go.
Yeah, I got priced out of Sly Stallone as well, I've got to be honest. When we started talking 6 figures to do an evening with, I don't think I could have made me money back. But hey, never say never. You never know. We're going to come down in price sometime, Mick.
Absolutely.
Well, football is potentially coming home again. But yeah, they've done a new version of Vindaloo. The Euros has kicked off, and it was, to be honest, a fairly comprehensive win for Italy last night with very little kickback from the opposition. I thought Turkey were pretty poor.
Yeah. I have to say, dare I say it, we might just have seen the winners last night. Often these are false dawns, but you look at what Mancini's doing with Italy. I mean, the thing with Italy is, as we all know as football fans, they've been absolutely blessed with talent, each and every championships, that they do go through the odd low spell, but in the main, they are one of the contenders, but they just seriously let themselves down tactically more often than not. They are, without any shadow of a doubt, a negative nation footballing wise. I mean, I was interested to hear that stat last night, but that's the first time they've scored more than 2 in any game in the European Championship. So that gives you an idea. But Mancini's got them, I think they're now 20-odd games unbeaten. They've won their last 9 without conceding a goal on the bounce. And I just like the way they knocked the ball around. I mean, it was a bit of a double-edged sword. Part of me thought, well, they're playing nobody, as you say. I mean, Turkey barely lifted a finger and caused them no problems at all. So we never really saw what they were like after Buffon, because Buffon's not in goal anymore. A slightly aging back four. We never saw that tested. But what we did see was that even though Turkey had basically an 11-man defence from minute 1 to minute 90, they created chance after chance after chance. They pinged the ball around, they passed the ball, they moved well, they pressed like nobody's business, and they created chances and could have won, 4 or 5. So if that is a sign of things to come, that they will be a contender. The difference being, and one of the big differences being, that while, like all the big nations, I mean, so much for this European Championships being about spreading the word around Europe, and then you've got Italy, us, Germany and Spain playing every one of their group games at home, and the likes of poor old Wales travelling from Cardiff to Baku and then back to Rome, etc. The thing about Italy is they won't play a game outside of their group in Rome. So once they play their 3 group games, and they probably win their group on the basis of last night, they won't play another game in Rome. And they are, like we all are, Steve, a different animal at home in that eternal city, in that Stadio Olimpico, than they are when they're playing in either Munich, which they might do in the last 16, or in London, semi-finals, finals. So we'll wait and see. But they were I thought they were very impressive,
Were the hairs on the back of your neck up when the opening ceremony kicked in? Was there a shadow of Italia 1990?
Yeah. I mean, as many people know, I was lucky enough to do the World Cup finals in 1990 with Bobby Moore and Jonathan Pearce and Terry Neal, and we had a fabulous time. And obviously Nessun Dorma is just, and I'm sitting there thinking, dear me. I mean, all right, it wasn't Pavarotti, it was Bocelli, but the similarities and the stadium and just the Italians generally. I mean, we had 6 weeks out there. The one thing I would say about them, going back to the Italians, they're a proper football nation, Steve. I mean, I don't know how much time you've ever spent in Italy, but they just love their football. And if you're a football fan, go to Italy and sit in a bar and just talk football with these people there. And the arms are going, and the gestures and the passion for the sport. So they are, yeah. So it was the build-up was reminiscent of 1990. Sadly, I don't think we're going to be as good this year as we were in 1990. I don't see any Shiltons and Gascoignes and Waddles and Beardsleys in amongst the England squad that they've taken, or not taken, because again, we're not going to move any further than Wembley Stadium, chances are. So we'll have to wait and see. But no, it was it's a fabulous country. But had the opening ceremony been in Baku, it might have been slightly different. You don't know.
A lot of England questions coming in. I'll take this one off our Facebook page. And if you're not already a member, join the group NUFC Matters on Facebook. Alex Likesell says, what do you think about England's squad, Mick?
I just find it, I have to say I find it underwhelming. And I don't really understand all this clamour and optimism about us possibly being semi-finalists, possibly being winners. I don't see it. In fact, I saw a stat yesterday that said, and I'm not a great one for stats, particularly not the Opta stats, but I think the Opta stats have us down as the 12th best nation there. And I think that's more realistic than us being semi-finalists. As I said, I was lucky to do Italy in 1990, and I did France 98 as well with England. And you look at those two squads, in 98, we had Shearer, we had Scholes, we had Campbell, we had Beckham, we had proper players. I'm looking at this England squad, and I always gauge a squad and gauge a team by who couldn't you do without? Who are the absolute certs in terms of the team sheet? And I'm looking at Harry Kane, obviously. And then I'm thinking the only other three I can honestly say, and these are personal choices as well, I would definitely have in the side. I would have Grealish, and Grealish is like Marmite. There'll be people screaming at this, saying they hate Grealish. Reece James, who I think is a fabulous player, and Mason Mount, who I think is a very good player. But take those four out, and I think it's much of a muchness. I think we've got two centre halves that are an accident waiting to happen, and that's when Maguire's fit. So if Maguire's not fit on Sunday, Tyrone Mings plays. If people remember Tyrone Mings against Newcastle at the tail end of last season, he is a nightmare. John Stones has improved, but John Stones is an accident waiting to happen. What was the one area once upon a time when England led the world? Goalkeepers. We had goalkeepers coming out of our ears once upon a time. There's a fella called Steve Harper who, had he been playing first team football elsewhere for a lot of years, probably would have got England caps. He was that good. And he wasn't even mentioned in terms of the pecking order. Now we've got three goalkeepers, Johnston, Henderson, and an aging Pickford. And you're just not sure, So goalkeeper, we haven't even got a goalkeeper that once upon a time we could always rely on. So I really, I just don't fancy us. I know, it might all click and the kids might come together, and that, and the likes of Bellingham and Sancho and people like that, might hit it off in the same way that, say, a Gascoigne did at Italia 90. But I don't see it. I looked at Italy last night and I thought to myself, can I see England doing what I'm watching Italy do tonight? Couldn't see it.
No, not me neither. Darren Cowan on Facebook says France, Italy and Scotland have fantastic national anthems, which their players sing with pride. He says England has God Save the Queen, which is for Great Britain. Should we change it? Because I would.
Well, I don't know what you would change it to. I think, obviously the rugby union team, I think used Jerusalem on occasions and et cetera. But I don't know. But I agree totally. I mean, the Italian anthem, which don't even ask me what it is or what it's called or what it means. But you see them singing that anthem last night. I mean, you're a goal up, aren't you?
There's about 25 of them as well. I mean, they went along the full line. I thought half the country was there at one point.
I think the Ristorante down the road had just gone on the end and had a little bit of a sing-song. But no, I mean, you compare that to the Marseillaise and the German anthem, which I absolutely love, although it's got slightly sinister political overtones. But no, I agree. I just it leaves me a bit flat, but. Believe me, the national anthem is the least of our problems in terms of whether we win the European Championships or not. What we've got to do is find an 11 and find a way of playing, and that's where the manager comes into play, Steve. I can talk about players all day, and we can talk about who should play and who shouldn't play, and who's good and who isn't good, and who's coming through and who should be playing because they're established. But at the end of the day, it's about the guy who sends them out. And if you think about the two best chances we've had of winning major championships in the recent past, one was a squad managed by the great Bobby Robson, and the other was a squad managed by a man who I had an awful lot of time for, tactically Terry Venables. So you had a Venables side and a Robson side, and I'm sorry, because I think he's a nice guy, and my dealings with him have been nothing but amicable. But Gareth Southgate is not on the same page as Bobby Robson or Terry Venables, tactically, or I think offensively as well. I think Bobby, although he had a defensive bone in his body, always looked at the likes of giving Gascoigne a go or giving people like that a go. Terry Venables even more so, But Southgate, safety first. It'll be interesting to see what happens against Croatia, because if we don't win against Croatia, as always happens in these major tournaments, when we invariably don't win our opening game, the pressure ramps up and the pressure piles up.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. And Darren, I kind of believe you asked that on the day of Trooping the Colour, the Queen's public birthday. Happy birthday, Mom! And I'm sure she'll be watching. She'll be tuning in after she's had a tea down at.
Don't tell her we were asking that question. Just edit that. When she's watching it back later, Queenie, just edit that question out. We'll bypass that question.
We could end up in the tower, Mick. That's the problem.
I'll go and get a Union Jack from somewhere and start waving it.
Chris, good afternoon. He's on Twitter. He says, who do you think is the talisman for this England squad, Mick? And who has been your favourite player to cover or interview in your time?
I think the talisman for this football team, the England squad out there, it would be easy to say Harry Kane, because goal scorers are invariably your talisman. But I think a bit like Gazza in 1990, you need somebody that gets the pulse racing. You need somebody to get you on the edge of the seat. And even though he scores goals, Harry Kane's never going to do that. You know, Harry Kane's never going to excite you. Harry Kane does, and he does it brilliantly well, and will go to, I think, go somewhere in the summer for a huge amount of money if he leaves Tottenham Hotspur. But I have to say, even though I mentioned the word Marmite before, and he is a bit Marmite, I think Grealish could be the one. I've got an awful lot of, I don't know, I swing both ways, as I think everybody does with Grealish. You know, 1 minute you think he's a fabulous player. You know, you could build a team around him. And then he does what he did during the COVID restrictions, and you think, hang on a minute, mate, you know, give your head a shake, you know. And Mason Mount's the other one, although Mason Mount is slightly less attack-minded, but there are one or two in there. I have to say, I'm going to be brutally honest, I don't know enough about Bellingham. He plays at Dortmund. He's won, 3 caps for England. He's 17 years of age. You know, all these people who say, oh, Jude Bellingham. How many times have they seen him play? You know, I've heard Jose Mourinho talk about him as if he's the next Zinedine Zidane, Pele, and Gazza rolled into one. Now, I bow to his greater knowledge, absolutely. So if the likes of Mourinho have him on their radar as potentially as good a player as that, then I'm looking forward to seeing him. But I just haven't seen enough of him. And I think at 17 years of age, to throw somebody into it, it's one thing throwing, as I mentioned earlier, the youngsters that we invariably do at big, Theo Walcott got a pick 1 year, didn't he? Gazza got a pick in 17. I mean, you should be doing your homework and cooking the tea for your mum, so we'll wait and see. In terms of the question about, what was it, the best ever or just the best person?
I mean, the best person you've interviewed or covered, I guess.
The best person that I've worked with. So it's sort of, it sort of answers the question in a roundabout way, and worked with for a sustained period of time. And this is pertinent to what we're talking about now, is Bobby Moore. Bobby Moore wasn't playing at the time, but Bobby Moore was an England World Cup winning captain who had the most unbelievable aura. Unbelievable. This is a guy who lifted the World Cup, could talk to princes and paupers. He's very much a Keegan, very much a Shearer, sort of a man of the people, but he'd done it. And when we first met, and we didn't really know one another, and then we started working. Then we spent about 6 weeks in Italy, and just the way he dealt with people, and the way he conducted himself, absolutely outstanding human being, unbelievable human being. You just felt, a bit like you do with these great ones. You felt about 10 feet tall when you were walking alongside them, because you thought, God, and they respect you, and you think, what have I ever done to deserve this? So I would definitely say Bobby Moore. But interestingly, I remember Alan Shearer's testimonial program. They asked me to write a few words. I think they asked 3 or 4 journalists to write a few words, and I said the greatest compliment I can pay Alan Shearer is he is a pea in a pod with Bobby Moore. That he has that greatness, that he has that aura about him, but he still has the common touch. And that was before Alan had started opening, his centre and started doing his media work, and really showing that he is somebody who doesn't take himself too seriously, who does, still have that common touch. So I would say Bobby Moore, without a doubt. But Shearer's a close second.
Yeah, okay. Tom's question, afternoon. He says, for me, the big tournaments are an enjoyable and neutral distraction to Newcastle United and club football in general. But do you think international football generally now lags behind club football?
I think that'll be. I think, funny enough, I was talking to somebody last week about who we think might win it, and there is a theory, although sort of Italy bucked the trend last night because they were so impressive. But I was saying to people, I honestly believed, and the European Championships has a history of this with Denmark and Greece, that sometimes, and I think particularly at this minute in time where footballers are so highly paid, and we've had COVID, which has football in a bit of a flux, and do they care or don't they care about the championships? Do they care or don't they care about international football? And there has to be a question mark against both of those. So is there an opportunity for a band of brothers to win something like a European Championship? because they care more, because, you know, they're playing for their country means that much more. And the guy I was talking to, a well-respected journalist, was talking to me about the Czech Republic and how he really fancied the Czech Republic. Now, I don't know enough about the Czech Republic to say whether they've got a chance or not. But our argument was that in the current climate, there might just be an opportunity for a nation who plays for one another, a nation who pulls together and plays for the pride of their country to win something like this, especially when the tournament, you know, you're going from here to there, to here to there. You know, all of these things are sent to test the mentality of your modern day footballer, who is paid millions and millions and millions, will be, you know, should be in their own mind, most of them sitting on a beach waiting to go back to being paid £150,000 a week at these big club sides and ready for another domestic season. So the question is, does playing for your country matter? And I think that will be a big test of England. I think it looks to me like a squad that's just thrown together. I mean, the boys that we've mentioned, Sancho and Bellingham, are playing the football in Germany. Now, I think that's great. I think it's great that British footballers have broadened their horizons. But what it means is, I don't think there's that level of solidarity or that level of togetherness that there was in 90 or there was in Euro 96. So, you know, we'll have to wait and see. But I do think the one thing I did think about last night was, I've been absolutely sick and tired in recent months, going back a couple of seasons, about this playing out from the back, you know, and tippy, tappy, lappy, and these Premier League games where all they're bothered about is how many passes they've made, how many stats there's been. You know, there's no urgency in the Premier League anymore. Last night, even though Italy were once upon a time notorious for playing the ball and taking their time, you know, there was some urgency there. We didn't see as much playing out from the back. I mean, you get Notts County playing out, you get Alfred and Town playing out from the back, you get Newcastle Blue Star probably playing out from the back these days. It's like well, this is what you do. Well, actually, last night was proven that you don't have to. You can play the game as the game used to be played, with a bit of urgency, a bit of passion, and let's hope that continues today. I mean, there's 2 or 3 good games today. It'd be interesting to see what the Welsh do against the Swiss. But you know, I hope it is. I think the question is right. I think it is a nice distraction, and hopefully, in a footballing sense, it's a good distraction as well. Because the Premier League just leaves me cold half the time now. I mean, it is as dull as dishwater. Yeah,
I agree, mate. Joe Walker says, Mick, what's your biggest moment of astonishment, good or bad, whilst covering Newcastle? He says, I bet there's been a few.
I think we touched upon it about a month ago. It was probably Cissé's goal at Chelsea. I mean, the 2 goals against Chelsea, absolutely out of this world. The other ones that are up there in terms of Newcastle, Tamuri Ketspire decided he's going to kick 7 bells of shite out of an advertising hoarding. I mean, you know, that was quite a good one, Ketspire. But I mean, you know, there's been a few with. I mean, there's just never a dull moment with Newcastle. But I think in terms of commentary and trying to describe something that you've never seen before and never seen since, I think that Cisse goal at Chelsea was absolutely. I still watch it now and still question whether he meant it, or was it a fluke, or did he mean it? I don't know. Incredible goal.
Darren Cowan he says, why don't we just sing Vindaloo as the national anthem? He says that'll get both players and fans motivated. Maybe have a Vindaloo before the play. Yeah. Maybe.
Well, in 2 games' time, when we're struggling to qualify out of our group, I think there'll be a few people recommending a Vindaloo to Gareth Southgate. I don't know.
Paul Shanks has just sent us his team. He says Henderson, Walker, Stones, Maguire, James, Rice, Mount, Chilwell, Foden, Kane, Grealish. 3-4-3 when everyone is fit.
Yeah, I mean, I picked mine this morning, and I have to say probably more against, more in terms of probably safety. I put Pickford in. I would have put Henderson in because Henderson played quite well in the last group game, in the last warm-up game. You know, Johnston. But Johnston and Henderson are so raw. You know, they're not playing at a particularly good standard. Pickford, we all know what Pickford's about. He's a bit of a loose cannon, and he was a tremendous goalkeeper. 5-6 years ago, he was a very, very good goalkeeper. He's clearly, like all players, goalkeepers suffer the same fate as outfield players. They lose their form, they lose, their ability to play at that highest level. But I still think I would go with Pickford. I would go with Kyle Walker at right back, just because this current trend, Steve, of defenders not being able to defend. I mean, there's half a dozen of them, and they're all brilliant going forward. They can all do 0 to 100 in 5 seconds. They can all cross a ball. When it gets to the tail end of a championships, believe me, you won't be attacking all the time. And against the likes of Italy and Germany and France and Spain, you'll be doing more defending than you'll be doing attacking. So there's no good in being 3/4 of the way up the pitch. And Walker, I think, is probably one of the few defenders in the squad who can genuinely defend. So I think you play Walker at right back, centre back. If Maguire doesn't make it, I don't think you've only got any real option but to play Mings, who, as I said, was, pardon the pun, minging against Newcastle at the tail end of the season, and still leaves me cold. And alongside him, Stones, who, as I said earlier, while he's improved, I still think he's a bit lackadaisical. Left back, I would play James, although I can almost find a place for James left side of midfield and put Chilwell in at left back. But if we put James in at left back, I would put him in there. I think we need holding midfield players. I think we need 2 holding midfield players, because, again, it's all well and good everyone saying, oh, we've got him. It's like KK's entertainers all over again. Sooner or later, we're going to get overrun in midfield by teams going the other way. So I would play Declan Rice, and I would play Calvin Phillips from Leeds United, who I think is a good player. I think he's prepared to put his foot in. So I play those 2. So I play 4-2, and then I would play 3, and I think I would play Grealish, Mount, and then I've got a bit of a quandary. Do I play Grealish, Mount, and Rashford, or do I play Grealish, Mount, and Foden? I think I'll probably play Rashford for his experience, although I'm sorely tempted to play Foden. And then I'll play Harry Kane up front, who has absolutely no competition for his place. And if he ever got injured, we may as well pack our bags and go home.
Alex on Facebook again says, was it wrong to not put in Wan-Bissaka in the England squad because of his performances at Manchester United?
I think strictly going back to the point I just made, Steve, and he's right, because, again, the point I made about Kyle Walker also applies to Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka has defensive bones in his body, and he can defend, But all of a sudden, it's all about Trent Alexander. It's all about, Reece James. It's all about these fullbacks who can get forward. Luke Shaw can. Luke Shaw, to be fair, isn't so bad defensively. But if you wanted a defender, then you would pick Wan-Bissaka. But Wan-Bissaka sort of also falls into the argument that I mentioned earlier about Bellingham and Sancho, about whether he's experienced enough. And you probably need more experience as a defender than you do as a midfield player, because there's more demands on you. There's more need for you to be switched on. There's more need for you to organise and tell people what to do. And I think Wan-Bissaka will have his day, but I don't think, and I think Gareth Southgate realised that, this is quite his time.
Yeah, big shout out to the sponsor, Spider VPN, for all your internet security. Google Spider VPN. They come up at the top of the search list, and the guys there can help you protect your passwords, protect your computer, and everything important on there. Big shout out to skipsandbins.com as well. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. And also a big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, and to Jab Signature as well for all their help with the flyers. If you're a first time visitor to the channel, hit the subscription button, which is in the bottom right-hand corner, the Newcastle Legends logo, and that's it. You can subscribe to free. Hit the thumb up to like the show and click the share button to share to your social media. Drop into the comments if you want to ask a question. You can also find us on all your podcast providers, including Spotify and iTunes. Don't forget, the Matchday Bucket is still running through the summer and is an England Matchday Bucket. Goes live again tomorrow. If you want to pop on to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk, any donation goes straight to the food bank and helps families who are in desperate need throughout this pandemic. And you also enter into the raffle for that wonderful watch, which will be drawn at our pool competition night, the 24-hour charity pool night, which QTech are organising at Spot White on Friday, the 6th of August. And that will be well worth getting along to, and I'm sure we'll have more details on that over the next few weeks. And we are doing a show tomorrow. It's yet to be confirmed, but Harrison Ford, maybe, you never know.
Live from Bamborough.
I have pre-recorded a few bits and bobs because I will be having a bit of time off myself as well. We have got a couple of acting ones coming up, actually. A couple of my pals, Bruce Jones, of course, many of you will remember him as Les Battersby in Coronation Street. He was also in the Full Monty, and I've also had an hour with Vaz Blackwood, which will be going out next week. You'll recognise him probably from things such as Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, and two very, very good interviews. I've got to be honest, Vaz certainly doesn't hold back in his opinions about a lot of things, and I think you'll enjoy that one. They'll be going up at some point this week. Anyway, back to the football. Thanks to Tom for his education lesson here. Canto degli Italiani, meaning the song of the Italians, is about Italians uniting and unifying, referring to the unification of Italy in the 1860s. Previously, Italy was a number of small states.
It was.
He says between the 1860s and 1947, when Italy became a republic, its anthem was Marcia Reale, Royal March. The tune is almost as good as their current one. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of thought gone into that, Tom. Thanks for your research. But
right.
There is some good anthems. Maybe it is time for a change, and maybe it's something that will happen once the current monarch, either retires from the role or passes on to the other side. I guess maybe things will change in different ways, shape, or form. But for the moment, she looks very fit and well.
I hope she's not watching this on catch up later. When she gets in from the trooping of the colours, she'll be saying to the rest of the palace, "Did you see that? Old Losey and Steve Wraith, they want rid of the anthem, and they want rid of me now."
It's Darren Cowan, not us, Mick. I'll be passing the blame to Darren. J-Lo tuned in late. He says, behind the live stream, but did Mick just say there are 12 better teams than us at the Euros? He went, behave. There's a couple at best.
No, what I said was Carling Opta Index, or the Opta Index, as it's well known. I was reading yesterday, have crushed all the figures. I don't know how they did it. And they came up with the stat that we are, on whatever basis, the 12th best team of the 24. Now, I didn't say I agreed with that. I just said I thought it was more realistic that we were the 12th best rather than the potential winners that a lot of people think we are. I think, personally, we will do very well to get to the semi-finals.
Just want to thank Azzy for this. He obviously can't claim credit for it. It's at Raji City. He's just come up with this one. Indiana Geordie on a mish. He's got a black and white scarf on, a bottle of brown ale. It's a good one, that. Cheers for sending that in, Azzy. Brilliant.
What somebody needs to do in all these superimposing and very clever pieces of artwork like Lucky's and this, that, and the other. Somebody needs to put Harrison Ford behind the driver's wheel of that little car that brought the ball on at the Stadio Olimpico last night. Have you ever seen anything so demeaning or anything that makes a major football championship cheaper than putting the match ball into a little... Did you see this?
Yeah, I thought it was Dennis Wise driving.
Yeah, well, honestly... and I thought, no, they're not going to send it on, are they? They're just going to... And on it went with, obviously, the manufacturers of a well-known Beetle car all over the side of it, and took the ball. They're not going to tell me they're not going to do that every game. Tell me that 2:00 this afternoon, when I'm watching the Welsh, at Baku, some guy's not putting the match ball into a little car and sending it on. I mean, honestly, just when you think this is a nice distraction from all the hype and all the shite of domestic football, they start putting the match ball in a dinky toy and sending it onto the pitch. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I've seen it all now. But I think you've seen it all. There'll be something else that'll top that at some point. Fungo says, Mick, what do you think of Foden? He's had his Gazza hairstyle.
Yeah.
He's a lot of comparisons between Foden and Gazza, and I'm always a bit concerned when these kind of things happen. I know Phil Foden, and you know he's a down to earth lad. He's got his feet on the ground. I don't think he'll get sucked in as much as Gazza probably did, but or definitely did, shall I say? But yeah, I mean, look, there's no doubt he's talent, but it just depends on the formation, doesn't it? Really.
Well, I'll go back to a very famous saying in football, Steve. You know, if you're a good player, you can play anywhere. If you're a good player, who was our best defender at corner kicks for 10 years? Alan Shearer. You know,
yeah.
Stick Alan Shearer in at the near post. He'll head the ball clear all day. Who was our best crosser of the ball? Who put in the cross of a lifetime for Rob Lee to head home at Wembley Stadium in 2000? Alan Shearer. You know, if you're a top player, Steve, you can play anywhere. And all this business about formations, and you see them now on the touchline with the iPad saying, you need to do this and you need to do that, and you need to move here and you need to move there. If you're a top player, you don't need telling. You know, yes, you need to have a level of discipline. You need to make sure that you're an integral part of a team and you're not just doing it off the cuff all the time. But if you're a top player, you can play pretty much anywhere. And Phil Foden is a top player. You know, I mean, this is a kid who, you know, was an integral part of our, what was it, under 16s or under 18s that won the World Championships with, it was the coach, Paul Simpson, who was at Newcastle with Steve McLaren, you know, and he's progressed and he's got a great mentor. The thing that slightly worries me is what you touched upon there. He got sent home from a qualifier because he broke curfew rulings. He's now having, for want of a better phrase, the Gazza haircut. You know, he's beginning to show one or two signs that maybe he's a bit of a lad. You know, now Guardiola, I thought would have stamped on that. And I think that's why Guardiola held him back for so long. You know, I mean, if he'd have been at any other football club probably in the Premier League, and I include, you know, the top teams, he probably would have played an awful lot more than he has at Man City. But Guardiola sort of held him back. And I always thought he held him back because he needed to keep the reins on him. And I'm just beginning to worry now that because the reins are off, because Guardiola's probably out of control with him in so much as he's his own man all of a sudden. He's not a kid. That we've got a problem. But in terms of a footballer, you know, I mentioned it earlier. I could have thrown him in, but I didn't throw him in as one of my, you know, absolute certs for starting the game. But I'm much happier when Phil Foden's in the side, because going back to the point I made earlier, Steve, about players who are hungry, players who want to play for their country, players who want to win this European Championship, players who care. I think Phil Foden's very definitely one of them. And that's what you want, you know?
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Definitely it'll be interesting to see how we develop. Still a young lad. Graeme Townsley says, hi, Mick, I think I heard a story from JP walking back to hotel with Bobby and bumped into fighting fans. The fans parted and stopped to let Bobby through. Is this a true story, he says?
It is a true story. It was in Turin. And it was after we lost the semi-final against Germany. And in the main square in Turin, all hell was let loose. And our hotel was on the far side. And the press bus dropped us off. And this was hours after the game had finished because we had work to do, etc. And literally, I don't know, it's overstating it to say it was like the parting of the Red Sea. But, you know, he literally just started walking. He said, F this. And started walking, and it was like, "Blade now, Bobby Moore, stop, lads, stop, hold on, it's Bobby." You know, we were shuffling along behind him, and he's going, "Thanks, lads, got to go back to the hotel," and that was it. You know, it's like got to the other side of the square. And he sort of turned around and said, "Carry on, boys." You know?
Keith Longworth says, do you think Kane will win the Golden Boot?
Probably not, because I can't be contradictory, can I? I can't say that at best I think we'll get to the semi-finals and then say I think Harry Kane will win the Golden Boot, because the player that wins the Golden Boot is invariably the player who plays not the greatest number of games, but certainly has to play at least 5 or 6 games or 4 or 5 games, which means that you have to get to the semis. I mean, I know Lineker won it in, what was it, 86. And we didn't get quite as far as that. No, I think I don't think he'll win the Golden Boot, but he is, as I say, he's a huge part of what we are. I mean, I look at the team, and as I say, I see potential, and I see a threat going forward. I don't see much of a defensive unit there, and I see us creating things if it clicks. But I don't see any finishes in there. I don't see anything. I mean, you talk about Grealish, you talk about Mount, you talk about Foden. These aren't goal scorers. These are generally providers. Harry Kane is your Shearer. Harry Kane back in 1990 is your Gary Lineker. They are the main men. They're the boys who you need to score goals to win games. So, I would love to think so, but I can't see it. But I like him as a player. And again, going back to the argument about him caring, I don't think he is one of these, flyboys. I think he genuinely wants to lead his country to a European Championships if he can.
Okay. Joe Walker asks a good question. He says, Mick, can you describe your match day routine that you used to go through? Your prep time, research, what time did you start? What time did you finish on a Saturday?
For a 3 o'clock kickoff, my prep would be done on a Thursday and a Friday. So I would do the opposition on a Thursday, go through all their lineups, go through all their recent fixtures, get an idea of their likely lineup. If I needed a pointer, I would ring a guy in wherever, Liverpool, London, whoever, to see if I could get an idea of how they were going to line up. Friday would be all about Newcastle. Friday would be going to the training ground to interview the manager. He would give me a steer. I was lucky enough with virtually every manager at Newcastle that they were prepared to give me the team on a Friday. Obviously, it was never divulged. That was part of the deal until 2 o'clock on the Saturday. But at least that way I could do all my stats and do all my prep, knowing how Newcastle were going to line up 1 to 11. So I was lucky enough to have that. So I would do all my Newcastle stuff, how the two teams lined up against one another in the past, etc. On a match day, I would invariably always be first at the ground. So I used to get to if it was St James's, it wouldn't matter where it was really, but if it was St James's, I would be there sometime between 12 and 12:30. I would set the gear up again, look to see if there were any late changes. I would do a couple of bits into programs before 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock we would start the program. That would be the build up for an hour. Commentary at 3. Finish at 5. Straight down, interview the manager. Probably about somewhere between 15 and 20 past 5, depending on the order. If a player was coming quickly, I'd wait for the player and his reaction. If not, I would shoot straight back up to the point. At St James's, you're quite low down behind the dugouts, so it's easy enough to get back in a short period of time to send the interview back, and then do the player interview as well. And then in later years, funnily enough, with the beauty of iPhones is that now you can record the interviews as MP3s or MP4s or whatever the phrase is, I don't know, and literally send it back to the studio. So I didn't even, back in the day, you used to have to lug the interview all the way up to the press box and send it back manually. Now you can send it back as you'd send a video or as you'd send a voice piece from your phone, send it back to the studio. So literally they would turn around the interview with the manager within 2 minutes of it finishing. So, modern technology was the biggest single factor in how my job changed between 1986 3, 4 when I started to 2016 when I finished. It was incredible. It was incredible. I mean, you wouldn't believe the gear we had to lug around back in the day. And then all of a sudden you're doing interviews on iPhones, and they can be edited. They can be videos. They can be whatever. So, the job changed enormously. But on a match day, that was generally the procedure.
Great stuff. Richard says, Mick.
Thanks for asking.
Great question. Richard says, hi, Mick. Do you think Graeme Jones will have any influence on England's style of play? I mean, there's so many coaches there. I'm not sure he will. But what's your thoughts?
Well, the one thing I would say is that, and I'd heard this before he was actually called into the squad, so to speak, coaching squad for the European Championships. I'd heard from somebody that there was a relationship between him and Southgate. I don't know where it came from. I don't know how the two of them got together. I think there was talk that they might have done their badges together, and invariably that's where these sort of seeds tend to be sown. Ex-players or coaches or whoever tend to form relationships when they do their badges together, because they see how one another work, they see how their mind works, and you need to be like-minded. It's like anything in life, isn't it? You need to be of a similar mentality. So there must be something in Graeme Jones that Gareth Southgate likes, and there must be something footballing wise that Gareth Southgate and Graeme Jones have in common, whether it be, I don't know, playing 4-2-3-1 or switching mid-game to 3 at the back from 4 at the back. I don't know, but there's clearly a relationship there. So I think it would be rude of us and remiss of us to think that it's just some sort of token gesture. I think Graeme, whether we see him on the touchline or whether we see him, in the ear of Gareth Southgate remains to be seen. But I think fair play to Graeme Jones. I think somebody who, once upon a time was close to Roberto Martinez and the Belgian national team, who, have got a major chance of winning this tournament. If he was good enough for Martinez, if he was good enough for Belgium, yes, he ended up, we took him from Bournemouth without being disrespectful to Bournemouth, but the fella's obviously got something. And going back to the conversations we had at the end of last season, Steve, it has to be more than a coincidence that Newcastle's upturning fortunes came when Graeme Jones arrived. It has to be. It's illogical to think, Steve Bruce just suddenly changed, or the players suddenly changed, or tactically we changed, or the players suddenly pulled their finger out and started winning games. Graeme Jones had to be a factor. Graeme Jones had to be a reason why, or part of the reason why, Newcastle in the end survived by 17 points, 12th in the table. So fair play to the fella. He deserves that reward of being in the spotlight in a major championships with England, so fair play to him.
Gary's wanting to know what your thoughts are on Ronaldo in Portugal. He says, do you think they'll be at their best with the players that they have in the Premier League? They're his pick to win it.
Well, they're in that group of death, aren't they? Let me just check it. Are they? They're not with France. Portugal, France, and Germany. I mean, Portugal, France, and Germany in the same group. Hungary are in there as well. But that is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. You look at some of the other groups, but to have Portugal, the reigning champions, don't forget, and then two of the big powerhouses, France and Germany. And the difference is, going back to what I said at the start of the program, Steve, for all this, it's all about spreading the word and it's all about UEFA, being this, that. It's all about, pampering the big nations. So England play all their group games at home. Italy play all their group games at home. But so too do Germany and Spain. So Germany in that group with France and Portugal have the advantage of playing every game in Munich. France, we know, are an outstanding side. So as much as I respect what your man's saying about Portugal, because clearly they're a good side, and any side that has Ronaldo in it is going to have a serious chance. They've got it all on, unless they get out of the group in third place. that's what they might have to do. And the problem is with those sorts of groups, if everybody starts cutting each other's throats, then sometimes a big team can miss out. So that's the group. I mean, Group E it's Group F, isn't it? Group F is the group to watch. I don't know when it starts, probably the middle of next week. But what a group that is! And the interesting thing as well is, on the subject of that group, Hungary, I'm told, the stadium, the Ferenc Puskás Stadium in Budapest, is going to be the only one, allegedly, that's going to be full. It's going to have all 68,000. So I don't know what sort of COVID bubble they've got in Budapest. So you've got a full stadium as well. So what a group that is.
Fungo's asking a one about taking the knee. I mean, it's something which seems to have dominated the build-up to our particular Euro preparations, and seems to be a bit of conflict of interest, but I guess, or conflict of opinions between some of the pundits and ex-players. And Rio Ferdinand saying, if you question taking the knee, you're racist, whereas John Barnes says it's time to forget it all. And I mean, he's not the only person to say that. I mean, we know at Crystal Palace we've had Wilfried Zaha refusing to take the knee. I mean, look, we all understand the sentiment. We all completely agree with it. But is it time to say, right, let's draw an end to it?
Well, the one thing you have to do, as you have to do with everything in life, Steve, is that you have to respect an individual's right to do whatever they want to do. Now, you know, if you bully people into taking the knee, especially black players, then you're basically cutting your nose off to spite your face. You have to allow autonomy to individuals if they feel strongly about it. It's what makes the world go round. You know, otherwise we would have a dictatorial state where, you know, everybody would do as they're told and there would be no freedom of speech, etc., etc. You know, it is the physical antithesis of freedom of speech. You know, you should not be made to go down on one knee because you feel pressured to do it, just because it's deemed to be the right thing to do. Now, I get it. I've always got positive discrimination. I think there's an argument for positive discrimination, but I think, you know, particularly when those who you are pertaining to help and support and help their cause, i.e., black players, if those black players then say, I don't want to go down on one knee, then they have to be allowed not to go down on one knee, in the same way that a white player who doesn't want to go down on one knee, who feels that he does his I mean, you know, John Anderson does stuff for kick out racism, you know, and show racism the red card, those sorts of things. Now, for whatever reasons, if on a match day those people didn't want to go down on one knee because they think all of a sudden it's cheap and it's weakened and it's not holding the same argument that it once held, and that's my thought on it. I think at the time it was the right thing to do, but now I think they're just doing it for doing its sake, you know. But you know, if people choose not to do it, they shouldn't be made to do it. They shouldn't be made to do it at all. So as you say, you know, the whole argument gets thrown up into a flux when leading black players like John Barnes come out and say, I don't agree with it, or I don't think everybody should be made to do it. It's a difficult one. I know Scotland have now chosen to come out and do it when they weren't going to do it. So I don't know. Each to their own.
A bit of an update on the Harrison Ford situation. He's been joined in Newcastle by producers and directors Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall, who've jetted into the northeast and took a stroll along the River Tyne, Mick. For those who don't know who those people are, they're Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, which means they must be going to be looking to make the next Star Wars in Newcastle, Mick.
Oh, don't. The best one was a mate of mine who posted a picture on his Facebook page of Harrison Ford laughing and joking. He was just sitting in the chair and he said, who'd believe it? He said, I was sitting here watching the telly. He's only knocked on the window. Here I am in Benwell, he says, and he's come in for a cup of tea. Kath's made him a cup of tea, and he was making out that Harrison Ford had come round for a cup of tea. Oh, it's classic. It's classic. Funnily enough, I remember on the subject of Europe, because this is pertinent in terms of European championships. there was a European Championship qualifier against Wales, again, ironically, about 20, I think it was 2006 or something like that. And in the what do you call it? The international breaks, me and some of the lads from Spittle Tongues used to go abroad, just a week away. We went all over the place. And this one year we went to Chicago, right? So we wanted to watch the Wales-England game, which was something ridiculous, like 6 o'clock in the morning. And I said, look, I'm going to go on a recce and find out where there must be a bar in Chicago that's showing this game. So I jumped in this taxi from the Drake Hotel in Chicago and ended up in this Irish bar in the middle of nowhere. And I walked in and I'm asking the barman if the game's on in the morning. He said, yeah, we've got the game on, Bob. And I looked across the bar, and sitting down with a group of friends was Matthew Modine. Now, if you can't remember, Matthew Modine is a big Hollywood star. He was in Memphis Belle, and he's been in. If just Google Matthew Modine, as soon as you see his face, you'll know him. And I walked over and I said, "You're Matthew Modine," and he went, "I am." He said, "Sit down." So I sat down. It was the week of the week of the Chicago Film Festival, and he was there, and he'd just gone out for a pint with his mates. And I sat there for about 3 hours having a few pints with Matthew Modine. In my room, I've got a beer mat signed to Mick and the boys, Matthew Modine. And it is weird. These people are real people. This is why when I saw the Harrison Ford thing, I thought, somebody's going to have my Matthew Modine experience in Riley's Fish Bar in Whitley or on the Fish Quay. Fantastic.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I went to the post office yesterday. I couldn't even get away from it. The woman behind the counter says, "Yeah, I was in the ship's cat," and Harrison Ford came in. She went, "Oh, I know. Did you say anything too?" She went, "Oh, I don't care about Harrison Ford. Like, I'm not bothered about him." I said, "Well, you're not seeing the films." No, it's definitely a certain. It's got to be more male thing, I think. Harrison Ford.
But also there'll have been about 6,000 people in that ship's cat that lunchtime. Oh, I was there. Yeah. Oh, I've seen him. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of me saying about Star Wars being made in town. Lots of people saying, well, there are a few Star Wars bars in town. Joe Walker has a Star Wars in Pennywell. Steve Wraith would save a fortune in makeup and costume. Last question to Funko before we finish, and he's just wanting to know. I just thought when you said you got your team sheets and formations a day on the day we played, what were your thoughts on Shearer and Ferguson being dropped against Sunderland?
I'll temper that by saying, I think if you wind the tape back, I said most managers, I was blessed that they trusted me enough to give me the teams. Who was the one manager who never gave anybody anything? Who was the one manager who just never got Newcastle? He never ingratiated himself to either the press, the players, whoever. Ruud Gullit. Never got a team off Ruud Gullit. Never got it. No one got close to Ruud Gullit's team. So I can tell you how I got X, Y, and Z teams off X, Y, and Z managers, but I never got anything off Ruud Gullit. Nobody did.
No surprises there. Mick, as always, been an absolute pleasure. Enjoy the Euros. Get you on in the next couple of weeks, mate, to see where England have got to. But have a good weekend and look forward to seeing you again soon, pal.
Good luck with getting Harrison Ford, by the way. Good luck.
Cheers, mate. Take care. May the force be with me.
Yeah, exactly. You might need it.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way